morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I'm your co-host, Dev.
And I'm the other co-host, Hugh, and on today's show, we're looking at minute 67, although we'll be starting a little bit earlier to pick up where we left off in yesterday's episode, as Martin Blank arrives to take Debbie for their school reunion date, and she's petrified to a certain degree because it looks like he's about to stand her up, just as he did all those years ago.
That's right. So it looks like Martin's actually coming in through the front door this time,
Yes.
for a change. And
as opposed to kicking down someone's door and shooting them like in Miami. Sorry. Yeah.
Or sneaking in the back door like he did. The other night. But there's a lot of awkwardness between these two, and I don't quite get it. I mean, because it's not like anything has changed, right? They've been together, you know. They've done all of the conversation. I feel like this is kind of would slip back into the old routine.
I think that's exactly what's wrong. Is we've just cut away from her being unable to reach him. She's still not happy, and he turns up, but that doesn't erase what's just been happening in her head.
Okay, that's an excellent point. Yeah,
I think. I mean, like if we put it from her point of view, from his point of view, everything's going to plan.
And this is once again Martin Blank being a little socially awkward in a lot of situations.
Right, and as he steps into the house, he starts to lean forward as if it's for a kiss, and she doesn't respond. Or at least that's how I see the body language in that scene. And I think that's deliberately reflective of the fact that she's just gone through this absolutely torturous few minutes of thinking that the worst thing that happened in her life is repeating itself. And then he turns up and goes, flowers.
And he doesn't even go flowers apologetically, right? He just tosses them to her.
Yeah,
right?
No self-awareness, right? No realization that maybe she was trying to get through to him. Nothing like that. Just, she's got issues, man. So has he. And this is where we see those issues clash.
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. Cool. So after Debbie announces that she's going to put the flowers in some rubbing alcohol, which is one of my favorite lines. I love that line.
It is such a good one, isn't it?
It really is. And Martin goes to say hi to Debbie's father, who is Mitchell Ryan.
Yes.
So Mitchell Ryan is one of these kind of jobbing actors that has been in everything, provides a gravitas, and that's a little ironic considering one of the first things he was in. But he plays a senator in The West Wing. He's been in a million different things.
The 1970s. He's the face. He's a face you see in just about every possible decent thriller, either on TV or in movies. I mean, westerns to start with, right? The guy comes from the era of westerns. He comes from an era of weekly TV plays as well, so that you're always able to find something to do. There's always work, even if it wasn't every week. But he was very much a bit player. I won't say which is the show that made him a regular, because I'll leave that to you, because I know you want to talk about it. But I just want to bring up that for me growing up, it was very much. Just remember seeing him in things like the Eastwoods. He became a regular on Eastwood stuff. So he's in High Plains Drifter. He's in Magnum Force. And then he's in a couple of really great crime films that are often considered to be a bit, like Grosse Pointe Blank, they're considered to be more indie cult. And that's The Friends of Eddie Coyle and Electric Glide in Blue. Electric Glide in Blue is one of these really odd 70s films about policing and corruption and just what makes it are the police who do certain jobs genuinely heroes, or is there something more psychologically weird going on in them? Friends of Eddie Coyle is based on is one of the only there's very few film adaptations of Boston-based writer George Higgins, who was also, if memory serves, either a magistrate or a judge when he started writing, and his books are very dialogue heavy. And he is one of the main influences on 90s neo noir, which gives us Grosse Pointe Blank.
Yeah.
Higgins's dialogue is crucial, so I think it's interesting that we get a guy who's been in those, but then also been in things like Cannon, The Rockford Files, Beretta, all that TV stuff. You know, he's got that
Yeah.
face of and he's in Lethal Weapon as the general. So
Yeah,
anyone who's seen,
exactly. And this is the thing, right? He becomes, by the 80s and 90s, the kind of the authority figure in these shows, right?
yeah,
The one with the
sheriff,
gravitas, right?
judge,
Exactly.
colonel, vice
Um,
president.
right. Riker's dad in Star Trek: The Next Generation
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
of course he was. He's Carl Riker. I
Yeah,
forgot about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, a huge number of things, but one of his earliest really jobbing performances is in a soap opera, I guess you'd call it, called Dark
Kind of.
Shadows.
Yes.
Which actually harks back to what we were talking about on yesterday's show with regards to this kind of concept of TV as a live broadcast in a very radio style, because that's
Yes.
exactly how Dark Shadows was played. Often not very well, to
Yes.
a point of ridicule. And it has not, I think, retained its fame. As you know, it was a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
It ran for many, many years.
Yes.
Um, and uh, I think his character was Buck Devlin, which is like right at the beginning of the show. Um, but it was a show that was done in real time. You know, often ad libbing the script at times. Things would go wrong. There was a lot of like, trying to just make it work that has ended up with it looking quite janky, somewhat campy. It has a ludicrous premise. It's really, to me at least, like the best of soap operas in a lot of ways, because it's not taking itself seriously, or at least it pretends that it is.
Right.
So yeah, that was a bit of a blast for the past for me, because I discovered Dark Shadows as an adult and kind of got low key
Oh,
obsessed
okay.
with it for a little while.
Okay.
Um, and so seeing that it was Burke Devlin, or realizing that it's the same actor that plays Burke Devlin, because he was a lot younger back then,
Yes.
was kind of joyful for me.
Would you put it on a par with Doctor Who of the era in some ways, in terms of the fact that when you come to it as an adult, you see the jankiness, you see all the strangeness, and you have to look past that to the actual qualities?
Uh, I do see it in the same way, but I'd say that you don't have to look past it. I think the way that you
Ah,
enjoy both of those, or the way I do at least, is by
yeah.
embracing it, by
Right.
just reveling in the fact that it is kind of terrible now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and
look.
I actually do that with Dark Shadows better than Doctor Who, because Doctor Who
Yes.
has that blend of like, rose tinted childhood nostalgia, and it's one of the reasons I never got into the new stuff, because
Yeah.
Doctor Who for me always highlighted the difference in production standards between British TV and American TV, because
Yes.
growing up as a child in the UK, BBC Two, every evening it would
Yep.
have some combination of Star Trek, some other American sci-fi show,
Yep.
and Doctor Who.
They
And
made it. They made it a thing. It was the 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. slot at one point in the 90s. I remember
6
vividly.
p.m. slot
Yeah,
for
because
most of the 90s, with The Simpsons right before it.
and you
That
had
is what I would come home to
yeah,
watch as a kid.
yeah,
And
and me as a teacher, I'd come home to that because I mean Buffy came in on the Wednesday on in that sequence. There was
yep,
Farscape
that's
at one
right.
point as well.
Farscape, yeah.
It was a great.
Stargate, I think, was
Yep.
in and out of there, but
God, I missed that.
Stargate went to Channel 4 quite
It
quickly.
did. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and like Angel went to Channel 4 and just completely died
yeah.
of death. Yeah, it was. Do you know what? I missed that. I don't miss getting angry about sports pushing it back, but I
No.
do.
Goddamn, Wimbledon every year.
Every
It was always Wimbledon. It was always
Wimbledon,
Wimbledon, because
snooker, cricket. God, Kim
yeah,
has never seen all of Star Trek Deep Space Nine precisely because of all of those pushings around,
yeah,
changing, shifting.
yeah.
Yeah. So one of these days we're going to go through it properly. But coming back to Ryan, one of the things I think is interesting with you bringing up Dark Shadows is I think it's one of the things that makes him such an interesting actor to be chosen for this film, because when you look at his career into the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you look at the decades, he goes through periods of time where he's being cast regularly in film, and then he's back in TV and he's regularly in TV. But the one thing that I think he gets to do more of slowly is take the mick out of the kind of characters he's been playing. So to begin with, he's usually playing these characters in films and TV where he has to be taken reasonably seriously. Although how seriously you want to take my beloved Stephen J. Cannell action trash 80s films like Hardcastle and McCormick, The A-Team, I don't know, right? But the point is, he's on the verge of parody and he understands where the line is. And he walks that
Yeah.
line. But then when he gets into the 90s, he starts to really kind of like cut loose because he's in Hot Shots Part Deux, right?
Yeah.
And he gets to be in, of course, what we're looking at now. But along the
Right.
way, there's Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, which is a terrible Halloween. Which is, I know that doesn't narrow it down for some people,
Yeah.
but out of all the Halloweens, that's arguably one of the worst. He's in Grosse Pointe Blank. He's in Liar Liar the same year with Carrie.
He is also in the horrific movie starring Sylvester Stallone that is supposed to be Judge Dredd. But I
Yes,
refuse to
yeah,
believe
he's
it's
one of the
Judge Dredd.
judges in that. I remember just
And he's
seeing
one of the judges in that. So yeah, very definitely a kind of a hammy element to what he does, but he still brings gravitas in
yes,
those environments.
yeah,
And
he's convincing in both. He convinces us
yeah,
both, and it's the fact that he can convince in one that makes you laugh at the other.
yeah,
But I also think there's a lot of guys from his era who didn't understand when they were funny in these things.
yes, I
Like
think you're right.
it's him, it's Leslie Nielsen, William Shatner, maybe, I guess. But do you know what I mean? There's like a small number of
Yeah,
these guys who used to be the good looking guys who were kind of semi stoic heroes or heroic characters back in the day, and they go and get to play their tough guys on screen, and then they come out the other end and they're like, some get to parody it and figure out how to be funny, and Nielsen
yeah,
was the king of that.
yeah,
I will
yeah,
never forget the fact that he always said the way you make the Naked Gun work is you play it straight.
yeah,
Frank Drebin genuinely thinks he's a smart cop.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's the same, yeah, same with this guy. I think
yeah,
that was Ryan's forte, I think.
yeah.
Um,
And in this dialogue between these two characters, we have some beautiful moments of just kind of back and forth banter. It it doesn't quite work for me as Martin is coming back to the father of his girlfriend
mhm,
after having like abandoned her. There's no temerity there in the
mhm,
way that I would expect in any real life situation.
mhm,
But it kind of doesn't matter to me because the back and forth here is just so good.
mhm.
Um, I mean, some of the lines that are spoken as well, right? Like this, um, I had this image of you as some slackster flannel wearing misanthrope that I see in Newsweek. It's like he is all but saying the word hipster before the word hipster exists,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just like it's it gives you such a strong mental image of like this that is ahead of its time, right? Like I
yeah,
don't really think that image until like the 2010s,
yeah, yeah.
and
I,
we're 20 years before that, or 10, 15 years before
I
that.
mean, there's a generational conflict here that has now played out with even further generations, right?
Yeah,
And that's the
absolutely.
thing,
Yeah,
but one of the things I think is interesting about this, we were just rewinding slightly to the point where when he's talking to Debbie and we were talking about the awkward moment, part of how she deals with the awkward moment before she makes the joke about the rubbing alcohol is by saying, "My dad's here. Let's go. You go talk to him." Right?
yeah,
She literally fobs him off, and there's a look on his face when she leaves the corridor with the flowers. There's a look on his face as if to say, "Oh, great," because he didn't get the
yeah.
kiss. Right? He
No,
doesn't get it. No affection. And she's just like, "Go see my dad," and it's like,
yeah.
"What?" Kind of thing. And then
He's dying to see you, and then Martin walks into the room, and he clearly has no idea
yeah,
that Martin's even like going to show up. Like
he's
it's
half
like,
asleep, right? He's half
yeah,
asleep in his sofa. He's clearly had a few whiskeys during, even though it's daytime. He's in this very lush, very well appointed, although relatively subtly appointed, lounge area with big fireplace and huge windows and these leather sofas and armchairs. I mean, there's not a lot of furniture in there, but the furniture that's in there is superb quality. This guy
yeah,
clearly has done well out of his life. He's got cardigan, flannel shirt, corduroy jeans, right? He's feet up on the footstool / whatever you want to call. I don't know.
Yeah, he's actually put his feet up on the coffee table. He doesn't
On
even
the coffee
have
table.
like
There
an
you go.
ottoman or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's that
Yeah.
casual about it, and I love the fact that he clearly needs glasses because he can't actually tell it's Martin, even though
Right.
Martin says it's who it is, until Martin leans in relatively close, and at that point, that's when the acerbic criticism kicks in. I love the fact that he said you made it before the millennium.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost my bet. Yeah.
And the other thing I think is interesting is that as he starts to dress down Martin, is I think kind of the important thing here is that we don't actually know what Mr. Newbury did for a living, but casting an actor like Flynn makes you think he was like ex-military, right? Before being business.
I'm not sure. I mean, he's of a generation. I just naturally assume he served in Vietnam.
Right.
Like, I think that's probably a given.
Right.
But I think in terms of job, I'd always taken it to be something that kind of has overtones of shady dealing, given that he's turning state's evidence, right? Which we know from other dialogues, right?
Yes.
So I'd assumed he was in maybe oil or something like that, or he was possibly like a union buster.
Yep.
Like something where it's, this kind of, it's a legitimate job, but only in America would you think it's a legitimate job, right?
Yeah, I get what you mean. And I feel like, but the thing is, what I find interesting in, and I think maybe I should save this for tomorrow's episode, is the fact that theoretically Martin now has something in common with this guy.
Absolutely, and that's
but he
where
doesn't use it, does he? In that way,
I don't know. I think he kind of does, right? Like, there's that redemption piece that happens here, right? Like, it's like, so what do you do? Did I get it wrong?
Yeah.
Are you that person that I, thought you were going to be? This kind of, not exactly ne'er-do-well, but pretty much like, somewhat financially successful ne'er-do-well. It's interesting that there was never really any doubt that Martin would be successful, right? Like, slackster, flannel wearing misanthrope. I still read that as being like somebody of the Richard Branson ilk, right? Someone that wears jeans to work, but they're still like, they're doing what would normally be like a white collar office job, right? They're still doing something successful. They're just embracing the new world in doing it.
I mean, the key to the phraseology is not just the flannel wearing slackster thing. It's the fact that he then says that I've been reading about in Newsweek. He's got no idea. He's never met one. He literally has no idea that these people exist because they don't exist where they live. They exist elsewhere. And in fact, he's, it's the classic prejudice of being informed. Notice Newsweek, it's not Time, right? This is pre-Fox News taking over. But like, if a modern version of this would be, I would be seeing on Fox News, right?
Yep.
It's very much that kind of where do I get my information from? It's again, incredible character detail with economy, sketch with economy. But yes, Ryan nails the tone.
And so there's never any doubt that Martin Blank is going to grow up to be a success because it's Martin Blank, right? Like, he was a talented kid, and he was going to make something of himself, right? He was going to escape.
What sort of person?
Exactly. Right. And it's when Martin subverts that I think that he's kind of redeemed in Mr. Newbury's mind.
Okay. Well, we'll carry on with that tomorrow. All right, then. This was minute 67 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring hosts, co-writers, co-producers, Dev Soligar and Hugh David.
You can find us at all good podcast players, as well as YouTube, X, and Spotify at Debi Radio, and on our website, debiradio.com. And for all of those, it is Debi spelt Debi.
And then if you want to come and chat with us, find us at the Facebook listeners group, Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club. Once more, that's DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment. It was a feeling.